Hello everyone and welcome back to another installment of my potential mini-series, How to Grow Orchid Seedlings. Today, as you can tell, I have plants that are very clearly no seedlings anymore because they're literally in bloom. The reason for that is that today I want to try to pollinate actually these Tolumias here. If you're interested in that, just stick around. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to preface this by saying that I've never tried pollination of orchids ever. As a kid, I pollinated tomato plants, but since they were grown outside, there's no way of knowing if me doing the pollination led to tomatoes growing or if it was actually the bats and the bees. What I want to say by this is I'm by no means an expert, and if you have any tips or if you have any input for me, for sure let me know. And then secondly, my lectures in botany, plant biochemistry, plant physiology have been long ago. I finished my master's like 5 years ago. All of this isn't super fresh anymore. I also don't have the expectation to approach this subject in a scientific way. However, if you're interested in learning more about kind of the science of pollination, or like I guess vascular plants, how they reproduce, let me know. I can make a video about it. But at the same time, of course, if I do pollination, if I show you how my process is, I should definitely address the anatomy behind it. And I think the first step here is to acknowledge that vascular plants are very different from animals, yet typically we use kind of the language from animal anatomy to describe what's happening in plants. What I mean by that is that we typically speak of male and female parts of a flower, even though the way they function and the way they are portrayed in a plant are very different from animals or humans. In plants, you still have kind of a distinction between these two cells, but they are oftentimes present in the same flower. So you have a flower that has male and female sex organs ultimately. And if we're honest, flowers are just kind of the frivolous display of sexuality in a plant. Like metaphysically, that makes the orchid hobby very exciting because it's kind of a sex positive hobby if you think about it. Everyone's excited for flowers. Oh, the smell, the display and everything. But ultimately, plants don't care about the display, right? The display is just for the pollinators to come and be excited. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but ultimately what I want to say is, you perverts showing off genitalia on YouTube. Not say. Anyways, maybe we can just have a look at the plants I have right now, and I want to point out then what the actually like reproductively relevant parts of the flower are. So if we look at a flower, right, it sits on a stem. I guess the first thing we see are the petals and sepals. Orchids typically have kind of 3 petals, like these ones, and then the labellum, which is an extended petal. And then you have sepals, which is 1 up here, and then 2 that are kind of tucked behind the flower. And typically sepals or sepals are there to kind of ground the flower and help in kind of displaying it appropriately. But then all of this is just fancy glitz and glam to make actual pollinators interested in coming to the flower and maybe eating some nectar or like eating some pollen, which are very nutritious both. Then when it comes to the sexual parts, actually orchids are a bit different from other vascular plants because they kind of fuse male pollen producing or pollen bearing organs with the female ones that would receive the pollen. Kind of here, this is called the column in orchids. And typically you have kind of the pollen sit on top there in a little pouch, and then basically the pollen is supposed to go under here where you have like a little sticky cavity. And I guess this is, I mean, I'm not an expert in this, or a sexpert you might say, but I guess that's how human sexuality works as well. Like the straights, can you leave comments down below? Like I don't know about sticky cavities and pollen and where it needs to go. Never listened to this during sex ed at school. I don't know, sorry. But anyway, so the idea right now is that I harvest the pollen and then I just shove it into the pollen receiving parts of the flower and hope for the best. And by hoping for the best, I mean I selected a few plants here that have different features that I would like to kind of merge in my breeding line, I guess. So first of all, the one that we've been talking about so far, this is Tolumnia White Beauty. This is an extremely vigorous plant under my care. It's very floriferous, so this is the second spike for this season and I'm really happy about it. And this is something that I really enjoy about this plant, is the flower display is made up of flowers with different colors. It has polymorphous blooms in a way. And so this isn't just kind of the pattern of the freckles, but what I mean by that is some of the flowers will be yellow, some will be pretty white-ish or like slightly lilac, I guess. Some will be a mixture in between. Some of them change color while they're growing on the plant, and I really like this, and this is kind of the main reason why I want to include this plant in the breeding, because what if the color changing effect kind of stays with the hybrid later on. Then the next one, it's kind of right below here. This is Tolumnia Brown Corona, and I know this is like the last sad bloom on this spike, but we have potential branching here, here, and here. And so that means if I'm not successful with my crossing, because this flower is already a little old, then there are more opportunities coming up. But this plant, I chose this one because first of all, I love the color of it. It's a very nice kind of fall palette. And also this plant bloomed twice this year, so there might be a kind of beneficial seasonality in the blooms. So that's really exciting as well. And then last but not least, I have this plant. This is Tolumnia Black Ball. Again, this is a second spike that's decided to open flowers, and I really like this plant just because of the color. It's this moody dark purple with this greenish yellow, which I think is so stunning, especially for the blooming season that this plant has, which is kind of the North Hemisphere winter. So it kind of perfectly captures a moody dark winter day, and I really enjoy it. However, I really don't like the shape of the flowers. They're kind of small. Also, the number is not as high as for other Tolumnias I have. So I'm basically hoping that I can get the color of this one and then maybe the shape of one of the two other plants that I chose. The idea right now is, because the black ball is a little bit of a smaller plant, I want to use this as the pollen parent. So it's going to be the father, Statai, and the other two plants, which both have bigger structures, I think they would be nice as seed parent or pod parent, whatever you call them. So the Mummai, Statai and Mummai, do you know what I mean? And so now I'm trying to figure out how to do this on camera and capture everything I'm doing whilst not making a complete fool out of myself. So let's see. Statai, can I please have your hot potent dadley? I'm just trying to pick at the top here. You can see I snatched up some pollen. I don't know if this is going to focus. I don't know if this is going to work, but I hope you can see that there's like a little package on top of this toothpick. And this is basically Tolumnia Black Ball's hot potent dad load. Hopefully this is gonna be super mega fertile, and it's gonna, to use Stephen Van Campen Lewis language, knock up the other plants. Awful. At this boy, I'm telling you. Oh, the locker room language. Okay, and then basically the idea is, and again, I'm sorry that this might be a little awkward on camera, but basically this now should go into the moist cavity.
Ron, play the music.
And it's supposed to stick there and hopefully this is a successful pollination. Yay! I mean, for sure it's stuck, right? So that should work. I feel like I'm really lucky that this channel is so small because demonetization is definitely not an issue. Because this really might be demonetized, right? Like, right? Problematic. Okay, then next up, I'm just gonna try it with this one as well. We have another pollen package from the black ball. The black ball has probably blue balls now because it's been so stimulated. So this should be the pollen. Maybe you can see it against the kind of dark sepal there. The pollen package. And this is going to be delivered into the orifice of this flower, which is already a little... It's an old virgin.
Honey, I'm not doing it, sorry.
And I dropped the pollen. Let's see, maybe this flower is just not able to... No. I keep dropping it. Let me just kind of shove it in there. And then let's see if this is actually going to work. I feel like it doesn't want to stick. Like for the other one, it just... You could just slide it in and it would just stick there. But here you can see I just keep pulling out the pollen. So I think this flower might really just be a little too old to be pollinated. I'm really curious to see what happens. I would expect that if the pollination was successful, the flower should drop pretty quickly, and then basically this little stem here where the ovaries sit should really swell up and we should see the formation of a pod pretty soon. Let's see if that's actually going to happen. We have two potential pollinations. Let's see how successful they are. I'm probably gonna wait a few days, maybe a week or so, but using YouTube editing magic, you'll be able to see it right now. Let's have a look at them a week after the pollination attempt. So this is the brown corona. If we can focus, hello. This is the brown corona, and you can see the flower is completely faded, but what we can also see is that it's not dropping at all. So I feel like this might be actually successful pollination attempt, because we can see it's kind of swelling up a bit, and it's because usually the stem would just drop. And then meanwhile, if we look at this one, if we're looking at the white beauty, I'm not sure what's happening there. For sure the flower is fading, but I'm not so certain if this was successful. I don't know. My instinct tells me maybe not so much, but we shall see.